Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's edition of the Brexit webinar hosted by the NPA. Today, we're going to talk a bit about Brexit and its impact on the independent community pharmacy. The UK has left the EU on the 31st of January 2020, and as I speak, there are 29 days to go, and that will be equivalent to 19 working days, until the UK and the EU finally will part company, that is, the end of the Brexit transition period. Now, currently, as we speak, we understand, as you are aware from the presses, that the negotiations are reaching a rather critical point, and hence much of the detail that we have with you today that is going to impact on the independent community pharmacy is still rather uncertain. However, for the next hour or so, together with my colleagues from the devolved nations, Janice Oman, Anne McAlister and Jonathan Rees, we'll be providing you with the most up-to-date information that we have at our disposal. My name is Helga, and a good evening and a welcome to all of you. So it appears that the key outstanding issues at the moment are the same as they were at the time when we had the referendum some 2.5 years ago. That is, EU fishing rights in the UK waters post-Brexit and the mutually agreed competition rules, that is, the level playing field. Now, I appreciate that we're not the National Fishing Association. However, these key points would need to be resolved, and how they are resolved would then lead into whether we arrive at a deal or not. So for the purpose of this webinar today, we will assume, just like all the government agencies are assuming, that we're going to have a no-deal situation. So we at the NPA, we've been watching and highlighting the impact of Brexit on the independent community pharmacy as early as 2 years ago, when we hosted a task and finish group and invited members to give us their thoughts and their feedback. And following that member feedback, we were informed and we felt that the highest impact is going to have to be medicine supply, and potentially due to price fluctuations, which seem to be a bit more probable now as a result of the pandemic, a potential increase in medicine prices, pharmacy workforce, and access to IT and data systems such as pharmacovigilance, including reports such as the yellow card scheme. So these became the template which the NPA used and we continue to use at each Brexit stakeholder engagement. However, this year, as the talks progressed, it then became apparent that the implications of the Northern Ireland Protocol may be problematic for us as well, particularly for Northern Irish members, due to the publication of the Internal Market Bill. So in addition to the elements I've just discussed, the next question we have is, what about Northern Ireland? How is this going to affect our colleagues? So we have raised these concerns as part of forums and also on a one-to-one basis with the MHRA and the DHSC, and also to our representation on the Pharmaceutical Group European Union, where we go and meet regularly with our European colleagues. We've also put across our concerns through the EU commissioners. We also wrote a letter to Mr. Michael Gove outlining our concerns, and in that letter we added the additional cost complexity of getting medicines into the UK, the reduced stock potentially being available, which may lead to stock shortages, increase in procurement costs, particularly with the FMD directive, which I'll talk a bit about later on in the presentation, the impact on competitiveness of the medicine supply, this is particularly when it comes to Northern Ireland, which might lead to not as many wholesalers delivering medicines to Northern Ireland. And we've also asked for a robust mitigation to the medicine supply, at least for 18 months. Then later on that week, we welcomed the news from the Cabinet of a phased period for the implementation of medicines regulation in Northern Ireland, which is now going to be extended to December 31st, 2021. However, we look forward to gather a better understanding of the timetable. And again, as part of the negotiations, we still don't know the details, so we're looking to find out what this would look like in the coming days. We'll continue to have conversations with relevant authorities from both the UK perspective and the national perspective, such as the Department of Health in Northern Ireland, and all immediate updates are being uploaded onto the Brexit NPA webpage. as well as through other means of communications we have at our disposal. You would have been aware of a Twitter link that you received this evening. We have also recently expressed our concern with the BMA, and we're currently working our way to some solutions, whether this be form of joint statements or processes such as the repeat dispensing process, which will help mitigate much of the concerns that we have. So we understand that the mitigations that are currently being employed to overcome some of the issues pertaining to medicine supply include multi-layered approach. So this was the same sort of approach that was applied the first time and the second time round we were due to leave the EU, which include a 6-week stockpiling by wholesalers. Pharmacists and GPs have been invited to maintain the current dispensing process and treatment intervals. And we also are encouraging, or rather the NHS is encouraging patients to talk about any issues they have with their medicine supply with the community pharmacist. So it'd be interesting to understand if you've already been having questions of that ilk really, and please feed them into us. Again, more details as to how to feed into us, I'll explain later on in the presentation. And then the protocols, such as the serious shortage protocols, has been enabled in 2019, and this will continue to be utilised in all instances of serious medicine shortages across the 4 UK nations. We at the NPA keep seeking a reintroduction of Section 10(7) of the Medicines Act, which allows pharmacies to share small quantities of stock with each other. Remember, this is something that we had before, but then it was withdrawn in 2012, as it was deemed to be, ironically, incompatible with EU law. And we're also calling for further empowerment of pharmacists in the community to be able to use their professional judgment to make any simple non-clinical substitutions when a medicine is out of stock. So this would allow us to help patients get their medicines in a timely fashion without the need for referral. This in part happens in Scotland already, so it's just trying to have a much more of a UK-wide approach to this and learning from each other. As I mentioned earlier, practical things we could do in our pharmacy at the moment is not stockpile within the pharmacy and talk to your patients, particularly now they start coming for their Christmas medicines. You know, they're going to start thinking about what's going to happen in January. These are critical 2 months ahead of us. And also, if applicable, apply for an EORI number. Now, the details as to the process on this are going to be in the presentation later, and you also find it on the NPA Brexit webpage. You may also wish to visit our dedicated medicine shortage webpage, which has some additional resources, including toolkits. And again, I've put the link on there. These slides will be available to you directly after the webinar, so you'll be able to click straight through to the links that I have provided. So now we come to the issue about the second concern we had, which was data transfer. The detail of this is pending, again, the outcome of the negotiations. So depending how the negotiations will flow, we will then have a bit of an understanding whether we will have access to IT data from Europe and vice versa. However, we do have some information regarding the Falsified Medicines Directive. So we know that Northern Ireland will continue to be aligned with the EU and separate from Great Britain. Hence, it appears to be, in fact quite probably, that Northern Ireland will carry on using the FMD, applying this principle, whilst Great Britain, so that's Scotland, Wales and England, will be cut off from the FMD directive, and that is the requirement to scan will now end. I've also listed here the UK FMD source website, the link, which would include some specific next steps that you'll need to do depending which country you fall under. It's worked out through there. In the meantime, we understand that MHRA and relevant authorities are working towards an FMD system Mark II that will be applicable across the whole UK, that is the 4 nations. To support this, we're watching the Medicines and Medical Devices Bill, which at the moment it's going through its passage through Parliament, which would ultimately enable the government to make the specific regulations aimed at preventing falsified medicines from entering the medicine supply chain. So this could include establishing a national system based on the unique identification of individual packs that enables medicines to be authenticated and identified if tampered with, We know that the government will consult with the industry stakeholders, including the pharmacy organisations, such as the Community Pharmacy FMD Working Group, before introducing any regulations. No timetable has yet been set, but we will know that we will be consulted on this. So any views, any thoughts you wish to make sure that we bring to the table while this is being explored, discussed, please write it to us. And again, I'll tell you the process as to how to do that later on in the presentation. Also relating to data, we've had some further information this morning from the ICO, and I'm just going to hand over to Janet to just give us a bit of a brief overview of that, please.
Hello. The ICO held a webinar today, and massive information on the Information Commissioner Officer's website, and the links will be included later on as well in the presentation. The discussion really was around data flow out of the UK and into other countries. And although that might not involve most of independent community pharmacies, there may be some other more complex business models where there is really the data going out of the UK or coming into the UK. So the explanation was that what happens with data flowing out of the UK into a European country as of January 2021. And it really is that everything carries on as now. The EU understands that GDPR standards are met with the UK, and that the data processes will carry on as they are at the moment. If you receive information in your organisation from EU countries into the UK, the EU have to understand that there is adequacy in both sides from coming into the UK. Now that's an adequacy statement that has still yet to be agreed by government, but it is in process at the moment. So assuming that an adequacy agreement is stated by the UK government, again, information flow will carry on as it is. So really, probably in most instances, it would be a case of there is no change, and we still need a data protection officer within the pharmacy. But we do need to be aware of that the documents that we have will refer to the EU GDPR regulations, and of course it will be UK GDPR regulations moving forward next year. So these should be amended. If there is information with no I can't say that tonight, I don't know what's going on in the adequacy statement from the UK government, then it will be standard contractual clauses will be applied just to put in the assurances of the data protection, and that will normally be by business contracts, and there is that the case with some organisations with data flow at the moment. So if the UK information is then going to a non-European country, the adequacy agreements will be there, the safeguards need to be there, so each country may have the advocacy within the EU. However, going out to non-European countries, UK sending that information out to that non-European country has responsibility to say that we're meeting the standards for safeguarding the data. So there could be specific countries either as a controller or as a processor of that information. So it's a case of if you are transferring information either in or out of your organisation, you should be checking the ICO website and seeing what's required, particularly if it's a non-EU country that's involved. Thank you, Helga.
Thank you, Janice, for that. If you have any further questions about this, again, make a note of them, and you can either ask them on the webinar, or we will give you links as to how to be able to get some further details if this is applicable to you. I will now spend some time talking about our third main concern we had in regard to Brexit, and this was the workforce. So at the best of times, you know, the pharmacist workforce, pharmacy technicians workforce, pharmacy staff is always a bit challenging in some of our specific areas, you know, within the United Kingdom. We've got the rural locations such as Cornwall and Lincolnshire in England. We've got the Highlands of Scotland. We've got Northern Ireland as a whole. We've got North Wales. You know, the list is endless. But we do have a concern that a no-deal Brexit may further exacerbate this issue. And we, therefore, the NPAs, petitioned all relevant government departments, including the newly appointed Migration Advisory Committee through the Home Office. Now, it's worth noting that back in September, the Migration Advisory Committee strongly recommended that pharmacists be entered on the shortage occupation list. So this means that with the new points-based migration process that will come into force post-Brexit, any pharmacist from across the world wanting to come to the UK will attain 20 points out of the 70 required from outside the UK. We have seen the shortage occupation list published, but we're still unsure as to whether pharmacists have made the final cut or not. Because in addition to this, the Home Office is also reviewing its issues around Tier 2 visas, which we know that many international pharmacists will need to be using to come and work here. So I'm having conversations, waiting for people to come back to me from the Home Office. So as soon as we get a final outcome of this will look like, I'll be updating the NPA Brexit webpage. And again, through the CRMs, your country representative manager, so we'll get that information out to you straight away. So in addition to that, we do know that the government will ensure that individuals with Irish professional qualifications will continue to have the means of applying for recognition in the UK, as per the commitments made under the Common Travel Area, so that is not going to change. So, and the UK will ensure that the British and Irish citizens have the right to work in the UK and Ireland. The GPHC and PSNI have recently published new guidance following the update, and now reiterating that the type of application and the evidence required to register will now be dependent on pharmacy qualifications and not the nationality. So this, they've added on this, and they also add that the pharmacists and pharmacy technicians with qualifications from European Economic Area, which is the EU plus Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway, will follow revised routes to recognition to their qualifications. However, these will be updated as and when in January 2021, again, when we get to know a bit more what the deal looks like. So please visit the relevant web pages. If you are in Great Britain, it'll be the GPHC, Northern Ireland, PSNI, and again, we'll have the links ready for you at the end of the presentation. So, in summary, we invite you to review your business continuity plan, including any support, including any suppliers that you have and the workforce regulations. We've listed here some potential web links, the first one being the NPA Brexit webpage, and then there is another fantastic webpage, which is the gov.uk transition, where you can put in your own specific needs and you will get tailored bulletin on a regular basis. I've tried this myself. It's absolutely brilliant because depending what type of business you have or whether you want to do it from a personal perspective, you will get all the information directly tailored to yourself. So I really invite you to go and do that. We also have got another web page around the delivery, again, also to subscribe to everything that I've been saying. I've mentioned the EORI number, which will be applicable more so for Northern Ireland colleagues rather than the rest of Great Britain, but actually do have a look on the type of business you have. Everybody might need to fill this in. Janice shared with us the information from the ICO, so there's the web link for any further detail on what she has spoken to us about today. Continue talking to your NPA country managers. You can also write to us at Independence Voice. This is a mailbox that I monitor myself on a regular basis, so it'll be coming straight to me, as well as the usual media through pharmacy services and the usual helpline telephone number that we have. So I'd now like to invite you all for some questions that you might have. Thank you. I also invite you to write any thoughts on the chat. Okay, so I guess we do have a few questions from members who have come to us in preparation for this webinar. And so we can go through these questions in advance. The first question, I guess, if I can direct it to Anne. We've mentioned quite a lot, Anne, about the Northern Irish Protocol and the situation where we're going to have some different processes applied to Great Britain and different processes to Northern Ireland. Could you tell us a bit more as to what other contingencies you might be aware that are also happening in Northern Ireland? with the conversations that we're having with the Department of Health, perhaps?
Yeah, thanks, Helga. So, I mean, there's quite a lot of concern about the implications of Brexit after the end of December in Northern Ireland, especially in relation to stock supplies and the movement of medicines from Europe and through Great Britain into Northern Ireland. So, ourselves as part of stakeholder group with Department of Health are working closely with the wholesalers and manufacturers to ensure that continuity of supply. I guess where there are some concerns, while we have the potential of next year during 2021 to shore up supply, is the impact that the additional regulatory burden and maybe subsequent costs will have on wholesalers' competitiveness and ability to meet the market needs here. So there are some concerns, especially around the likes of some of the short line wholesalers, that continuing activity in the Northern Ireland market may not be as attractive to them, given the additional regulatory burden and associated costs moving stock into Northern Ireland. So that's certainly one to watch. At the moment, they are making verbal commitments that they will continue to their supply, but certainly are aware of the pressures coming down the line on them. So that's certainly the main. Sorry, go ahead, Helga.
Thank you. We do have a question from Mr. Glenn Simpson, also about the EORI number. I'm not sure if we have the answer to this, or we might need to come back to him. But he asked, do I have to notify all companies I deal with in Great Britain with my EORI number? Do you happen to know the answer to that, or something that we need to find out later?
I'm not sure, Glenn. The advice at this stage is to make sure that you are registered. So to make sure that you're registered with the Trader Support Service through gov.uk. There was a cut-off date to the 23rd of November where you could transfer across your GB EORI number to generate the new requirement. You'd be auto-enrolled for an XI EORI number. If you've missed that deadline, you can still go in to manually request that. So it's a little bit uncertain at the moment as to what activity or what trade will be traced through that. But certainly the recommendation is that you register with Trader Support and apply for the EORI number.
I'll just ask a question now we have for Wales. Jonathan, have there been any specific conversations as to the impact of Brexit from Welsh Government at the moment, or is it still the same as what's going on here in the UK, waiting on negotiations?
So far, in every discussion I've had with government is very much following from England's lead. So obviously medicine supply and all those kind of issues are all being followed on from Westminster, really. So there's been no direct kind of change of policy from Wales to England.
Okay. Yes, Wales does tend to flow through, and as I said, we will have quite a great deal of information probably coming over the next couple of days in terms of guidance. What about Scotland there, Janice? Has there been any noise and mutations coming out of Scottish Government? You're on mute at the moment, my friend.
Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprise have their own support hubs for Brexit. Have their own checklists for small businesses in Scotland, but there isn't any specific different information coming through. We are slightly different to do with the medicine shortages. We don't always follow the same serious protocols, shortage protocols that are around the UK, so just to be aware that there could be differences there. And medicine supply issues, we're fortunate in community pharmacy that we have a few more tools to be able to enable the transfer, to get the medicines, the equivalent medicines to patients.
Okay, and I guess it'd be something to know. We have another question here from Michelle Claridge. I'm not sure which part of the country she's from. I'm assuming it's Northern Ireland. Who asked that currently pharmacies with a wholesale dealer's license, does that mean WDA? Forgive me, Michelle. Will sell in and out Northern Ireland from the mainland. Will this remain permitted, and will it be subject to additional duties? So if you go onto the web page, the EORI number is required for those individuals who are going to be supplying products from Great Britain to the EU, which is why you need to do it if you are in Northern Ireland, because because of the protocol, temporarily you'll be part of EU. So I'm not sure if that answers the question. Janice, Anne, Jonathan, you any builds on that answer that I've just given?
Well, yes, that seems to be the advice, Helga, and to sign up with the Trade Support Service in order to secure that.
Yes, I just couldn't quite understand. I couldn't understand where this person is from, Great Britain or Northern Ireland. So it's just trying to translate that. But we've had a link on the web pages, and we'll be able to highlight it any further. And you had a few questions from your members regarding FMD, or was it Janice? But basically, we've been having some questions around whether you still need to use FMD if you are in Great Britain, or and what you need to do. But ultimately, this will end in Great Britain come the 31st of December. And we've also had some questions regarding products having barcodes. And the answer is yes, you will have products still having the barcodes, because that was regulation at the time. So there will be a while where you will still be having that sort of practicality, if you like. But of course, as I already mentioned, the UK will be looking to having a UK-wide approach towards FMD, and my colleagues through the Community Pharmacy FMD Working Group will be able to share a bit more information about that.
Yes. The FMD was getting discussed at the NPA Scottish Member Forum this week. So there was quite a lot of discussion around, yes, we don't need to do it in Scotland anymore. And there was quite a range of opinions, some saying that yes, there's the patient safety aspect of it, so that I will keep some of the FMD processes, remain with my dispensing process. There's features of it that you may wish to carry on, and that's absolutely fine. And then there's others that will just say, no, we're not connected. I'm not doing this anymore. But the case will then that the new system will start, and we don't know really how similar the systems will be or the timeline, do we? But it's quite all right to carry on some aspects, isn't it?
It is. But of course, you'd be cut off, so you'd just be scanning. Maybe, and some people do have software that they would. It's good to record what stock goes in and out of their pharmacy, but it will no longer be the legal requirement in Great Britain for the moment. Jonathan, have you got any builds of FMD? Have there any questions been coming out from Wales?
Not as yet. No, I haven't had any questions regarding FMD. Again, it's something that we've had the same announcement as England, and we're following the same guidelines. Again, a lot of people's PMR systems will have that scanning feature, and it acts as a safety check anyway to check the item against a prescription. So some will carry that on anyway, especially as we are 2D barcode scanners anyway. Some may, as they've already made the switch, will continue with it.
Okay. But it doesn't appear that we've got any further questions here that were coming up on the things. Ashley, have you got any people with their hands up at all? Anybody else would like to ask anything? No? I think that's it's either it's a case of we already know this, or it's a case of we're all waiting for the next 24 hours. I mean, what probably will happen is we'll finish this webinar and we'll have some update on the 10 o'clock news, and we'll have to do another webinar to update you all next week. So it's 8 p.m. So unless there's any other further thoughts, comments for anybody, I wish you all a very, very good night. Continue to talk to us visit the Brexit webpage, write to us, speak to us, call us. You've got our details. And I wish you well and stay safe. Good night. Good night all.